Coronavirus.
Coronavirus, yes. This is, it's kind of scary.
It is, because I would think if it's a coronavirus, I just need to give it a lime and let's sit back and relax.
Sit on the beach and, kick some back, but it is not a party. So for those that don't know, we have a novel coronavirus called Coronavirus 2019 NCOV. Was identified December 31st, initially in, and I'm sure I am mispronouncing this, and you know what, somebody should correct me so I know, but Wuhan, China, December 31st, there was an unusual pneumonia cluster. So they had several people get sick. It was a pneumonia-like illness. They were testing for it, to see what was going on. And all of the tests were coming back negative. They could not identify what these folks were sick with. And it became apparent rather quickly that this was something new, possibly. Extra testing was done, and they identified that, yes, indeed, this was a virus that we had never seen before. It's a coronavirus. Most coronaviruses are pretty mild. They actually cause somewhere between 5 and 30% of viral cold illnesses worldwide each year, depending on the year. But sometimes coronaviruses can be particularly dangerous and deadly. The two most famous were SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. SARS was first reported in 2002 in southern China, and started, there have been no cases since 2004, which is the good thing. The bad thing was mortality rate was 10%. There were 774 deaths. 87% of the cases were in China and Hong Kong. MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, was first reported in 2012. Cases and deaths have been declining since 2016. But this one was particularly virulent. We all remember SARS as being scary, but MERS carried a 34% mortality rate, 858 deaths. So coronaviruses, both of these, including the new one, appear to have been spread from animals to humans. It's called zoonotic. And then after that, there has also been human-to-human transmission.
But it's not easily transmittable, right?
Well, and here's the thing. The WHO, World Health Organization, is calling this a complex and rapidly evolving situation. So what we know today, we will know more tomorrow and so forth. So as of right now, we think it spreads very similarly to a common cold. We think it's droplet, and we think that the particles are fairly large, like larger than the flu virus, but honestly, we're not 100% sure on this. But if someone coughs, and the droplets go out of their mouth, fly 3-4 feet, land on a surface, and you come along, touch that surface, touch your eye, you can get this. Usually it's fairly close contact, like if you hang out with somebody in the same room. So we just really don't know how highly contagious this is. It certainly doesn't look like anything as contagious as influenza, or
Ebola.
Certainly nothing like measles. But there are, as of earlier today, 557 confirmed cases, 17 deaths, which is a 4% mortality rate, which is not something to brush off. The United States identified the first case on our soil on the 21st, and that was in Washington, their state. There is also a case in Brazos County, Texas, that is suspected, and the CDC is running the sample, and we should know back on that. And there have been other countries that this has spread to. So it is, it's concerning, and the scary thing about this is, and frankly, anytime we have a brand new virus that we have never identified before, we don't know what's going to happen. And not to sound doom and gloom with this, because, a 4% mortality rate is alarming, but it's not, it's not crazy. But we don't know how people are going to respond to this. We don't really know what's going to work in terms of treatment. With SARS and MERS, essentially there was no definitive treatment. It was supportive only.
Right.
So, and we don't know what long-term health implications there will be. So the good news is China, with SARS, way back in 2002, they came under a lot of criticism because when SARS first emerged, the government was very secretive and withheld a lot of information. And that led to the spread of SARS unnecessarily.
Right.
This time around, they have been very aggressive. Immediately when they knew that they had a problem, they reached out to the World Health Organization, who is absolutely the authority when it comes to something novel or very unusual. They did the right thing. They have continued to be very aggressive with this. They have essentially quarantined the city and a couple of other cities. There's 11 million people in Wuhan. So when we're talking about 570 or 557 confirmed cases, when you put it into perspective, 11 million people is not a lot. But the flip side of this is we know with these type of illnesses, the majority will go undiagnosed because people feel kind of bad. They stay home,
Right.
or we hope that they stay home.
Right. So we're here on 89.5 WJMU The Quad. We're on the faculty lounge. The other thing that we have to think is that's China. It's a long way away, but we have had 2 cases here in the United States, one for sure, one possibly. How long does it take before we here in the United States have to start worrying and panicking and going into full Ebola mode?
Well, we should not panic because again, this is a coronavirus that seems to be causing severe illness. So a fairly high incidence of pneumonia with it. In fact, I found today on the WHO site, 25% of confirmed cases are deemed severe illness. But we don't have to panic. Most people, 96% of people who have caught this so far have survived it. But we need to be very vigilant and aware. And, China sounds like it's really far away. It's only a plane ride away. When I went to Copenhagen, it took me 6 hours to get to Copenhagen. You think about, Denmark being, Europe, it's far away. It's not far away when we're talking about international travel.
No.
And both of the case in Washington, confirmed case, and the suspected case in Texas, both were in Wuhan, China, and recently traveled home. So the bottom line is if you're a healthcare provider, what the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, is suggesting is that we start screening for this now. So this is lots of fun, right? Because it's flu season. So anybody with a fever or a cough, we need to ask them very simply, have you traveled to China in the past 2 weeks? And if they have, you need to quarantine that person. You need to contact your facility's infectious disease person. You need to contact the state health department. The state health department will contact the CDC. Right now, the CDC is the only place that testing can occur. So what they will do is work with the state health department to get that individual tested. They're actually recommending, hey, don't test them. There's like this funky viral panel that you can order, that will come back if they have a coronavirus or if they have rhinovirus or an adenovirus or whatever. They're saying don't order that because, if you suspect the coronavirus 2019, we don't want anybody else handling that sample because handling that sample could infect that person. And the thing is, we just don't know. The CDC is working to get the testing out to more sites within the next few, days to weeks. And I think how quickly they move on that is going to be dependent on how many cases we're seeing and how urgent this is. So World Health Organization convened yesterday, and they were going to decide whether or not to consider this a public health emergency of international concern. They couldn't come to a conclusion yesterday. They reconvened today, and they've basically said, as of right now, it's not meeting criteria for that level of concern, which is the panic button. So they're not hitting the panic button, but they're reconvening in 10 days, and sooner if things change.
So in other words, we've got 10 more days to decide whether or not we're going to have a major pandemic on our hands, and if we can all completely freak out.
Well, even then, we shouldn't freak out. But it is, if you're flying, you should be cognizant of where you're flying to and where the plane that you're getting on. Where did it come from? Okay, as of right now, the only airports that are accepting flights into Wuhan or from Wuhan, China, are LAX, Atlanta, JFK, O'Hare. There's two others that off the top of my head I'm not catching, but there's 6 airports nationally. Okay, so there's a pretty good screening process. They're taking people's temperatures, who are coming off of flights and screening for symptoms. And if you're symptomatic, you may not be
going home,
proceeding through the airport, things like that.
Yeah.
So we are taking this seriously.
The thing is, if there's one person in the plane who's symptomatic, doesn't that mean that they'll basically have to quarantine the whole plane?
Well, no. But they probably would notify the folks that were on that plane, and there may be some surveillance measures done. We saw this actually with Ebola, missionaries that traveled back. There was the unfortunate nurse who had to live in a tent in the parking lot
See,
of
that's
the
what I was
hospital. It's the
thinking
most
of
ridiculous thing I had ever seen in my life. But there should be some surveillance if you have had a known exposure, and I'm sure that there will be. We're not there yet, but the bottom line is, if you're on a plane right now, and this is just good advice, period, if you're on a plane. It's flu season anyway. You know what? You need to take a mask with you when you travel.
That's right.
Because you can't control what other people choose to do and how responsible they choose to be. If you are sick and you have to be on a plane and you have a cough, you should be the good person and wear a mask and tell the people around you, that, hey, I'm not feeling so great, da-da-da-da-da.
I have mask questions.
But you can't control that, right? You
Yes.
can't, make somebody wear a mask because it's the United States. But you can put a mask on yourself to protect yourself. And the best mask to get, if you can find it, is an N95 respirator, because that will stop very tiny particles, such as influenza. We're not sure that coronavirus is going to warrant that level of a mask, but the WHO is recommending it as a precautionary measure.
Can you decorate your mask?
You can decorate your mask.
Because Corinne's going on a plane flight soon. Can you draw pictures?
Well,
and make
as long as you don't mess with the integrity of the barrier, right? So, the thing is, have a mask with you. You don't have to wear it, but if somebody sits down next to you and they're not looking so good, put your mask on.
I want to put fangs on my mask with little blood droplets coming off of them.
And you would be the most popular person on that plane,
Yeah,
I'm sure, if you did that.
It would be fun.
Also good, and I, not a huge fan of the hand sanitizers, because I think we've gotten a little bit over paranoid with germs. But this is the time to carry hand sanitizer with you. If you're on a plane, carry the hand sanitizer with you. You still need to wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Wash your hands every chance you get. 30 seconds with soap and friction, and then rinse very thoroughly. You're manually removing those germs. But hand sanitizer, when you're on a plane and you can't get to a sink every hour, to wash your hands, hand sanitizer is a really good idea. So those are the things. And you know what, guys? There is no amount of echinacea or onion necklaces or garlic or sage or zinc or vitamin C that is going to save you from coronavirus or influenza.
I'm sure that if I cut an onion in half and stick it out of my front door, nothing will get me.
It will not save you from this. So you need to do what is best for yourself, and that is to have a mask with you if you're flying. I think a mask is good to have, on you all the time. Although I do not have a mask in my purse at all times. But if I am traveling, by golly, I've got masks with me.
I know, and I see you at work and you've got your mask on.
You know what the best thing ever is on a plane is to wear a mask, because when you sit down and you've got a mask on, ain't nobody gonna sit next to you.
Oh no.
Unless that thing is like jam-packed full, no one is sitting next to you. It's a great way to end up with a window seat with nobody in that center seat.
There you go.
So there are perks to this.
There you go. All right.
So yeah, I mean it's scary. So WHO is saying anybody who's been exposed to coronavirus, that folks with close contact are at most risk for catching this. Close contact they've defined as being within 6 feet or within a room or care area of a coronavirus case for a prolonged period of time while not wearing protective personal equipment, gown, gloves, an N95 respirator, and they're recommending goggles.
What about glasses?
Well, glasses provide some barrier, but the goggles, actually seal to your face,
Yeah.
and the particles can't get, around the glasses. So goggles are best. So healthcare providers, they want you being pretty careful with this. So.
Okay.
Scary stuff. It's
is.
going to be an exciting next few weeks.
It is. And I'm the one that started sending you all of the articles. I know you had already read them, but I started sending you all of the articles. And I do think that it's something that we all need to be extremely concerned about. But I also don't want to see us go through and do the whole Ebola thing too, where everybody just went nuts. And
yeah, we should not be ridiculous on this. It's a concern because it's new.
And the media has a real good chance of taking this and running with it and getting everybody freaked out.
There's a fine line the media has to play with things
Absolutely.
like this, because they need to get the word out. That hey, this is potentially serious. 25% of cases develop severe illness. But they also need to do that fine line of not being, where we're chasing people down the interstate, who are in ambulances, and
It's called reporting with nuance.
It's tough though. It's tough to say, hey, look, this is serious. We need to watch it. We should take reasonable precautions and monitor this, and get people to actually do that. Take it seriously enough to do it, without totally, losing our minds over it. Because
Absolutely.
this is not, it's not Ebola, but you know what? It's also more contagious. It's going to spread a lot quicker than Ebola does.
Yes.
I mean, people with Ebola are sick.
And people on this, most of them are going to be fine, and if you get it, you're probably just going to think you have a cold.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. And so people with colds tend to be mobile. And they're going around.
Here's my question,
that
and
type of thing.
I'm serious, and I'm sorry if this sounds kind of cynical, but it sounds to me like you'd be better off, or you'd be more concerned of getting the flu than you should of getting this virus.
Well, it depends, and that is something that I'm not sure we know about. With influenza, our bodies, most of us, in adulthood, have had the flu at some point in our lives, and we have immunizations for it. We do have ways to protect ourselves, and our immune system has seen similar stuff before. When you have a new illness, and this is why it's so concerning, is we're all susceptible to it. It's new. Nobody has any immunity, although immunity for coronaviruses does tend to wane fairly quickly after infection, so you don't necessarily end up with lifelong infection. But when you have an illness that's new, that 25% of folks that are getting it are seriously sick, we just don't have enough data to be able to answer a lot of these questions, you
Right.
know. So time will tell. Time will tell. I am concerned about it, you know, but I don't think that this is, I think it's something we need to be reasonable with
Okay.
and measured.
I think that's fair. I
And
think
you
that's
know,
fair.
if you live in China, and I think that they're being very aggressive with this, and you feel like you even just have a cold, those folks need to stay home.
Yeah.
You know, they need to stay home until they're well, and they've been well for a couple of days. If this becomes a bigger issue in the United States, then we're going to need to start, you know, enforcing that too. But you know what that's going to take is it's going to take employers supporting of that
Well,
and people calling in sick, because there's a lot of folks that have to go to work sick because they're going to get fired if they miss.
I told
More
that to
than-
a friend last week. I told him he had, you know, the flu or a virus, and off he went to work. I was like, you shouldn't be doing that. You know, I've got a cold, but I mean, I've got a cold. I'm not going to be sending this or sending anybody to the hospital. But I'm staying as far away from it as I can from people because I don't want to get anybody else sick. You know, I think that if you are in a position, especially if you have to work with people, stay home.
Yeah, it is very simple, but again, people have to be comfortable doing that,
Yeah.
you know. And we, at least in this country, and I suspect a lot of places, you know, we feel like we must go to work or our job is in jeopardy. So it's going to, if it becomes an issue in the United States, it's going to need to take a level of public education as well as corporate cooperation and things like that. So yeah.
Okay, Jason, why are you laughing?
Well, I just found a meme about what we were talking about the flu in China.
What did it say?
Well, it's got a picture of, you know, someone representing China knocking out a person representing human rights, but then it shows some flu as a giant thing about to mess up China.
Okay,
I can show you. It's hard to explain a picture like this over radio, but
take a look.
I was just stumbling across it and I laughed because it's exactly part of it is what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. In China, if the government tells you to do something, you don't have the right to.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't have a choice, and I certainly am not an advocate of that. So, you know, it is what it is. They are saying, you know, there's been a lot of questions on where did this originate from. MERS originated from camels. SARS originated from bats. They are thinking, and we don't know this, but they are thinking that it is Dr. Lambert's favorite animal, snakes, that have started this. And now, the interesting thing is, the first cases were exposed at a seafood market, but apparently they were selling other animals as well. So, we'll know more about that in the coming days as well. You know what, though, is in the news today that I thought was particularly fascinating?
What?
There's been a Sasquatch sighting